What if the world woke up tomorrow and World War III had already begun? In the past few hours, the Middle East has exploded into chaos. Missiles lighting up the night sky, air raid sirens echoing across cities, and two of the region's most powerful enemies, Iran and Israel, now standing on the edge of a direct war. But here's the strange part. While social media is flooded with shocking footage and rumors of massive attacks, many people are asking the same question. Are we being told the whole story? Because behind the headlines, something far bigger may be unfolding. Military bases hit, secret operations rumored, and powerful nations quietly choosing sides. Is this just another regional conflict, or the first domino falling toward World War III? In this video, we're going to break down what's really happening between Iran and Israel, and why the truth might be far more dangerous than what you're hearing. And to understand why everyone is suddenly talking about World War III, we need to go back to what triggered this sudden escalation between Iran and Israel. Tensions between the two nations have been building for years, but the latest crisis reportedly began after a series of targeted strikes on Iranian-linked military positions in the region. Explosions were reported near strategic facilities, and within hours, a report started circulating that Israel had carried out precision attacks aimed at weakening Iran's military capabilities. Iran didn't stay silent. Soon after the strikes, missiles and drones were reportedly launched toward Israeli targets, triggering air defense systems and sending civilians rushing for shelters. Sirens echoed across several cities as defenses intercepted incoming threats in the sky. Within a single night, what had been a shadow conflict suddenly looked like a direct confrontation between two powerful rivals. And that's exactly why analysts around the world started asking a frightening question. Is this just retaliation, or the beginning of something much bigger? Then came the night that made the entire world stop and watch. Reports began flooding in from Tehran and several military areas across Iran. Loud explosions were heard, flashes lit up the sky, and videos quickly started spreading across social media showing smoke rising from different locations. Within minutes, rumors and unconfirmed reports began circulating that key military installations had been hit. Across the region, the tension escalated instantly. In Israel, air defense systems were activated as sirens warned civilians to take shelter. Fighter jets were reportedly scrambled, and military units were placed on high alert. The skies above the region suddenly became a battlefield of drones, missiles, and interception systems. For years, the conflict between these two nations had mostly played out in the shadows, through cyber attacks, proxy groups, and covert operations. But this moment felt different, because for the first time in a long while, the confrontation looked direct and public. And when two powerful enemies begin exchanging strikes openly, and the rest of the world starts asking the same chilling question, are we witnessing the start of a much larger war? To understand why this conflict is so dangerous, you have to look at the long and complicated rivalry between Iran and Israel. Surprisingly, there was a time when the two countries were not enemies at all. Before the Iranian Revolution, Iran actually maintained diplomatic relations with Israel. But everything changed when the new Iranian leadership came to power and adopted a strongly anti-Israel stance. Since then, the rivalry has only grown deeper. Iran has openly supported groups that oppose Israel, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Israel, on the other hand, views Iran's expanding influence in the Middle East, and especially its nuclear ambitions, as one of the biggest threats to its existence. For years, the conflict has played out quietly through cyber attacks and intelligence operations and proxy battles in countries like Syria and Lebanon. But what makes the current situation so alarming is that the shadow war may now be turning into an open confrontation. And when two longtime enemies with powerful militaries start clashing directly, the consequences can quickly spiral beyond their borders. As the conflict intensified, another battle began unfolding, this one in the world of information. And major news outlets across the globe started reporting on the escalating tension between Iran and Israel. Headlines focused on missile strikes, military alerts, and diplomatic warnings from world leaders. But at the same time, social media exploded with a completely different narrative. Clips of explosions, intercepted missiles, and military movements began circulating online within minutes. Some users claimed that the situation was far worse than what traditional media was showing. Others argued that many of the viral videos were either outdated or taken out of context. This created a confusing situation where millions of people were trying to understand what was real and what was exaggerated. Because in modern conflicts, wars are not only fought with missiles and drones, they're also fought through information. Governments, media outlets, and online platforms all shape how events are perceived by the public. And when information becomes part of the battlefield, separating fact from speculation becomes harder than ever. Now comes the question that everyone is asking. Could this conflict spiral into a global war? If Iran and Israel were the only two players involved, the situation would still be extremely dangerous. But the reality is far more complicated, because powerful global alliances sit behind both sides. Israel has long been supported by the United States, which considers Israel one of its closest strategic allies in the Middle East. And any large-scale attack on Israel could quickly draw the United States into the conflict. On the other side, Iran maintains strong ties with countries like Russia and China, both of which have criticized Western influence in the region. If more nations become directly involved, the situation could shift from a regional war to something much larger. History has shown that global wars often start with a regional conflict that pulls alliances into a chain reaction. And that's exactly why analysts and military experts around the world are watching this situation so closely. If the conflict between Iran and Israel expands beyond a limited exchange of strikes, the consequences could be felt far beyond the Middle East. One of the first impacts would be on global energy markets. The Middle East controls some of the world's most important oil routes, including the Strait of Hormuz, through which a huge portion of the world's oil supply passes every day. If that route were disrupted, fuel prices around the globe could spike almost instantly. Air travel and international shipping would also be affected. Flights across the region could be rerouted or cancelled, and major trade routes could become dangerous. But the biggest risk would be the possibility of other regional powers becoming involved. Countries across the Middle East would be forced to choose sides, potentially turning a two-country conflict into a much wider regional war. And once multiple nations are pulled into the same battlefield, controlling the escalation becomes incredibly difficult. So the big question remains, are we really witnessing the beginning of World War III, or is this another dangerous chapter in a long regional rivalry? Right now, the situation between Iran and Israel is tense, unpredictable, and evolving by the hour. Military forces are on high alert. Global powers are watching closely, and the world is waiting to see what happens next. But history has shown that some conflicts explode into global wars, while others stop just before the point of no return. But one thing is certain. When powerful nations stand on opposite sides and missiles begin flying across borders, the line between regional conflict and global war becomes dangerously thin. The coming days may decide whether this crisis fades into history or becomes the moment the world remembers as the beginning of something far bigger.